VIX is still above the 50-period moving average. It's still above the green line there, the 50-period moving average. We now have the 10 getting above the 50, so you've got the 10 and 20 above it now. In a bullish realignment of the moving average trio, the 10, the 20, and the 50. And we're still holding above 18. Again, you start getting above the 18 to 20 area. That's where volatility comes in. We're at 19 right now. The fact that the 50 is still above the 200 is warning this rally is going to end up filling. Now, whether it's done here or not, or whether we buy a little bit more time remains to be seen. But we're holding above the 50, which is very problematic. Rallied on lighter volume. So again, there's some huge red flags with this rally back up. I predicted new all-time highs. I predicted the rally 5750 to 6,000 area. That's my target level. We're there. I expect the rally is going to be terminated. Divergences begin to play out in the daily time frame and spill over into the weekly time frame, and then we'll see those weekly divergences play out, and it'll really get ugly. People, social media right now, the investors, they're oblivious amount of risk right here at these resistance levels I've talked about with the trend lines, monthly and the weekly time frame, and the divergences and all the rest of it. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, please let me know that by supporting the channel today. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. Do that, I thank you. The link was broke for a couple of days over the weekend, and then a couple of days this week. That was resolved. So again, consider supporting the channel today, and the link is up and running. We got an 8 of a 9 count today. Now this count may not complete. It may complete. You got to be above the bar tomorrow, above the bar from 4 bars ago. The 8 bar can be the high of the count, but we got to be above the bar from 4 bars ago. Otherwise, the count will be canceled out. So keep that in mind. These other counts, again, they played out. We went a little bit higher, did play out and produce pullbacks. One, if we get it, it's likely going to produce a reversal. We had the 13 count on NASDAQ. 2 sessions back, we went a little bit higher, and we've had off after filling the gap so far. The count may not finish, but it may. Bar 8 is the high of the count so far. You got to be above tomorrow. We got to be able to close above the bar from 4 bars ago. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got to be able to close above this bar 5 right there. We got to be able to close above that level. If we do, if we rally, still see a sell-off, a topping tail, or if we get a strong close, sell off, and then come back up and get a hanging man or something like that, you can still close above this level. If you close below this level, then this count will be canceled out. If it completes, we'll have a 9-9 signal. There is no perfected signal here because bar 7 was the high of the count. We went a little bit higher. Once we did that, the count was a perfected signal. Still produced a pullback. This one is likely to produce a reversal. Price exhaustion. We'll see if we complete the count. So if we buy a little bit more time and hit that upper boundary of the rising wedge. Now, I was going to show you this later in the video. Did it towards the front of the video because it's important to make sure everybody is aware of that tomorrow we could get the completing of a 9 count sell signal. Canceled out, we drop below the bar from 4 bars ago. We'll have a new 1 of a 9 to the downside. Keep in mind, I talked about the 9 count that formed in the weekly time frame last week. I told you to be watching this week's bar. Did we go a little higher, which we did? Turn, or did we turn immediately? And I talked about this wide range bar. Told you we could see a doji or a spinning top before the weekends. We have that possibility here. It's not closed yet. So then you have the possibility of an evening star reversal, the wide range bar, the doji or the spinning top, and then the reversal bar. That happened on the weekly chart at the July top for NASDAQ 100. I talked about that at the time, predicted it would happen. We'll see something similar here. But we have a 9-9 here after the 13 gave us a pullback at 13.9. Now we have a 9.9. And again, it's a reversal pattern. And if we complete it tomorrow on the daily chart on Friday, you have a 9.9 in the daily time frame. You have a 9.9 here in the weekly time frame, both reversal patterns. Kind of interesting. Again, do we get a 6-week winning streak here, or do we start a reversal? And we've talked about this again weekend and throughout the week. I've talked about how are we going to close on the weekly chart. Far, we've got a spinning top, candle of indecision. We'll see if we close out that way. doji, and again, do we rally up and sell off? Do we turn down and sell off? Again, is this pattern end up forming or not? And we'll be watching to see. We have options expiration. Dow had the same candle, a 9. In the weekly time frame, we've moved a little bit higher, but again, it's showing price exhaustion. So again, we'll be watching to see if we start a reversal. We're at major trend lines of resistance in the monthly time frame. Again, I'm looking for a lower high with NASDAQ. We already got the 13.9 over here. Again, I talked about this as we were leading up into that July 10th peak. We can go a little higher, slam into those trend lines in the monthly and the weekly time frame in turn. We did. And again, and then I predicted a rally back up for that lower high. That gave us this rebound for the lower high here. But again, the evening star reversal, the 13.9, and again, watching to see what kind of candlestick we get. Do we get a doji or a spinning top? Something like that, some kind of topping tail or something by the end of the week here for the S&P 500 weekly chart. I have a 5 of a 9 in the weekly for NASDAQ. I don't think it's going to play out, but we are getting, so far, again, a candle of indecision there with the doji. The daily chart already got a 13 count. And keep this 13.9 right here in the weekly time frame because, again, it's the next week, the following week, where we got that 9 count that marked the very top on NASDAQ on the July 10th top. You can see that on the daily chart over here, that 9 count, it was a 9.9 that marked this reversal. And again, these are the patterns that have set up now in the weekly time frame, and possibly we get it in the daily time frame for the S&P 500. 9.9 is setting up in the daily time frame possibly tomorrow. 9 counts have marked some turning points here, a pullback, here a reversal, here this corrective move. We had this 13 count. We went a little bit higher, got that gap fill, and now we pull back. Do we go up a little higher? Is that it? And we start diverging with the S&P. So again, we'll be watching to see what happens with that 9 count and potential divergence that did form today on the S&P 500. We did get this 13 count. S&P will get possibly a 9 count tomorrow unless it's canceled out. But you did get a 13 count here, again, saying, hey, the time is short. This is showing price exhaustion. And again, I believe it will set up a lower high. Now, we filled the gap. Maybe we go up and flirt with that area a little bit more. Maybe we don't. If we get the lower high scenario, we'll be watching. But I am looking for a top here. Made that very, very clear. I think we're going to get lower high for the NASDAQ. We've already completed the 13 count here. We'll see if we complete a 9.9 sell signal on the S&P tomorrow, or is the count does it get canceled out? We do complete the 9 count again right here. This 9 count, it marked the day of the top. This 9 count over here, we went a little bit higher, and we saw that in the weekly time frame as well. So again, here with the 13 count, we've gone a little bit higher. So we'll be watching if the S&P does complete the 9 count in the daily time frame tomorrow. Do we go a little higher? We're seeing that in the weekly time frame. Already, we got those 9 counts the previous week on the S&P weekly chart. If S&P can get that 9 count completing, I'll be watching to see if we make it up to this upper boundary one more time here or not, or do we start moving down and start testing the trend line and the 10 period? We're trying to take them out. So I'll be watching, does that 9 count complete on the daily chart? If we can rally further, again, maybe we get something here that looks very similar to this. Again, the rally, the big push down, and then we were up for 3 days, the rally, the push down, and here we have 2. Do we get one more? Very, very similar. Again, the sideways consolidations, as I talked about after tagging the upper Bollinger Band, and then correcting sideways and then pushing up here. So very, very similar price action. And again, these divergences are in place. When we start seeing the divergences in the daily time frame begin to play out, it will spill over here into the weekly time frame, and we'll begin to see these play out. And again, watching to see, do we get a 6-week winning streak? Right now, we got a candle of indecision in the form of a spinning top. You got doji-looking candlestick on the NASDAQ. Do these candlesticks remain by the final print on Friday with the weekly chart? They could change because, again, you only get 1 bar with the weekly chart. But again, we're rallying back up into this trend line of the upper boundary of the channel. And again, we do get a 6-week winning streak. You get that 9 count possibly completing in the daily time frame, getting a 9.9 reversal, and you'll have a 9.9 reversal in the daily and a 9.9 reversal in the weekly, showing price exhaustion. Again, as I said, by the time the MACD rolls over, and by the time we start seeing the RSI begin to tick down, the sell-off will have already begun. It'll probably be a good push down by the time we see that happen. The warning signs are here because the market takes its time doing what it's going to do, forming a top. People go, a 6-week winning streak, there's nothing going to happen to take this market down. Nothing's going to happen. That's called complacency. People that are looking for a turn, because it doesn't immediately happen, they become frustrated and come to the false conclusion that it's not. Again, complacency with the bulls and the bears. I'm going to be looking for this to complete, and we'll be watching if we start a turn this week or next week. These divergences in the weekly time frame, and again in the daily, in the MACD rolling over on the NASDAQ daily. So we'll be watching to see how this unfolds. S&P daily momentum is still positive. Again, we had our triangle. Told you we were going to go higher. We didn't make new highs with the August peak here. Told you with the sell-off we were going to go and see things turn back to bullish and make new highs, move to a new all-time high as the NASDAQ would go back and fill the gap. That way. We're looking now, the NASDAQ's filled the gap. Now we're looking for a topping process. So I'm going to be looking for red bars here. We do have it on the NASDAQ, that bearish MACD crossover. We don't have that yet on the S&P. We'll be watching to see, do we get it, or do we complete a 9-count sell signal and we try to rally towards the upper boundary of the rising wedge there? Turn, but we're going to be watching to see how it unfolds. If we do turn, we need to see a reversal of conditions. We need to see red cloud, red bars, and give something like what we had over here. Over here was a correction. Over here was a correction. This is likely going to be a reversal the next time we see it happen. Good chance of it anyways if we start seeing those divergences in the weekly time frame play out, dropping below the 10-week moving average. And we'll see how we close out the week with the doji or spinning top, or do we start a reversal this week? But right now, again, you've got a little spinning top on the S&P 500. I'll be looking for a red bar going forward. Again, the triple divergence that has set up on the MACD and the some oscillator in the weekly time frame here. S&P weekly. Quickly, NASDAQ has gotten some red bars. We'll see if any green bars reappear or not. The MACD has rolled over. Again, we got that bottoming tail yesterday at the 20-period moving average. Rallied today, but got a lower high, and it stalled, and we're here at the 10-period moving average. Even if we try to rally to get the 9-count completing tomorrow, remember, the 9 count doesn't have to be the high of the count. The 8 bar is already there. You got to have 8 or 9 be the high of the count. But above that bar from 4 bars ago, as I said, in the daily time frame. But keep in mind, again, we're seeing warning signs of momentum. I already told you about these signals right here. The semiconductor sell-off, you got the signal here and here, the little X and the T, warning that momentum could be ready to shift. Now we're getting another one. Look at that. We had a warning sign of this pullback, this bottom, this top right here. There were other warning signs. We don't have the little circle yet. We don't have the sell signals that could show up if we start turning. And then we'll see if the momentum line turns to red like it did over here. There's no arrow here yet either, but we do have some signals with momentum that are warning, hey, prices could be getting ready to turn. This is a warning sign to you and to me because, again, we have a divergence on many indicators. Here you can see it with momentum. It has formed a divergence and it's starting to turn down already. So again, if we inch a little bit higher, see the rally end very, very soon with that. And again, these signals are warning that that is going to be, likely be the case. S&P daily here. Now, filling the gap on Monday, we have the same divergence on the NASDAQ daily chart here with momentum. It's turning down. So again, is that all she wrote? We'll be watching to see if we start selling off on Friday or on into next week at some point. I got some warning signs right here of this pullback. My signals turned back to bullish. The momentum line turned bearish back to bullish. Now I'm getting a few more warning signs. Don't have the topping signal here for short-term momentum on NASDAQ yet, but we did get 2 warning signs on the S&P 500. So that's interesting. And again, we do have that divergence in play here in the daily time frame here with momentum and other indicators. If we start to sell off sharply, other warning signs could show up. If we rally with strength, we could still see warning signs begin to show up. We'll be watching. I told you that I was looking for these divergences on the 4-hour charts and on the 60-minute charts, and we got it here now. We moved slightly higher on the S&P. It may not be done. We didn't hit that upper boundary. We don't have to. We already hit it right here or came pretty close to it. I pointed out that, again, we had a divergence over at the July top, over here at the August peak, and over here just before the triangle formed in October, correcting sideways. Each one of those led to some kind of correction Likely lead to a reversal with our pattern here, a rising wedge. Do we go up one more time, push into that level with options expiration or on into early next week and then turn? Or do we do it immediately and start to turn? Momentum line still bullish here in the 4-hour time frame, but you're seeing a divergence. Maybe we get something like this where we formed a divergence right here, this little one right here, but then went up a little bit higher and even got a bigger one there. So maybe we see something like that. We're here forming multiple points of divergence like these other ones. We could see something like that happen and still go up into that upper boundary. So do be aware of that possibility, looking for clues, especially if we form the 9 count, a new high, the 9 count being the high of the count, you can go up and hit that upper boundary. No guarantee we do. Something I'm watching, I'm looking for clues. Time is short, but the S&P is likely putting the finishing touches on the reversal. We'll see if it's done or not with today's divergence. And remember, we now have a divergence between the S&P and the NASDAQ in the most recent price action here in October. So that's why I was telling you, I thought we'd get a rally with the Taiwan Semiconductor earnings. I thought maybe these divergences might form, which I've been talking about. It now has completed on the S&P. We don't have one yet on the NASDAQ, just the Dow and the S&P. Get one if it diverges with the NASDAQ, if the S&P diverges with it. I just want to touch on these earnings. Had Netflix after hours. First there was a drop, now it's trying to rally, but we had the Taiwan Semiconductor earnings. A lot of concerns after the report we had of the earlier in the week with ASML. I told you I thought we could rally based on the 60-minute charts with here, but NASDAQ failed to move to new high. S&P did, the Dow did, but we did not see it. And again, sometimes verge at turning points. So maybe that's all we get. And I'll show you the charts and let you decide what you think. And I'll show you the things I'm looking at with NASDAQ and S&P 500. But we saw a very powerful earnings report. Third quarter profits for Taiwan Semiconductor rises by 54% and beat expectations. Big rally on Semiconductor, and the market tried to rally, but it fizzled out. It was pretty much flat with NASDAQ and S&P. That's not a good sign. The rally is being sold on good news, and we've had lighter volume. Institutions are not the ones buying. It's the retail investors, the dumb money. Institutions keep selling. I was watching to see if a topping tail would set up here on Taiwan Semiconductor. I was watching this all day, and it ended up doing it because, again, we opened, we had the rally. Would we not hang on to the rally? And we did not. We're up almost 15% at the highs, and we closed just under 10%. It was 9.79%. So again, getting a topping tail, getting a shooting star candlestick here on Taiwan Semiconductor. Still ended up almost 10% for the session, but rally on the S&P, the rally on the NASDAQ, the rally was sold, and we ended up flat. Not a good sign. A rally here with NVIDIA. We had rallied up just above this peak right here, just above 140. We were a few cents above that high. You can see it right here, but the rally was sold. We ended up getting a black candlestick. We gapped higher. We moved to a new high, but we didn't close at 140. Closed just under 137. The rally was given back, and you get a black candlestick, and you get the topping tail on Taiwan Semiconductor. Rally is being sold. Now, again, maybe we go a little higher above this, but I am looking again for a double top here on NVIDIA. I've continued to say I'm looking for a double top on NVIDIA. I'm looking for a double top on the NASDAQ. Again, this is options expiration week here. See what things look like by Friday. We're seeing the rally sold as we're getting good news. Not a good sign. Now, with the push above this peak right here and slightly above here, there is a potential divergence here in the most recent price action, and also from this peak over here, we're forming a larger divergence because we did move now slightly above this level. Thought we get a lower high, have it marked ABC, but again, to be wrong about that, we can go higher, but I'm still looking for a double top. Ended up going higher. S&P, NASDAQ has not, and again, that high is still holding major resistance on those trend lines. Real fast, and after hours, we got the Netflix earnings. They added about 5 million subscribers. It was expected 4.5 million. The ad tier members jumped by 35%. There was a knee-jerk reaction down Time I looked at it, it was moving higher. Let's take a look. Netflix in after hours is currently up just over 4%. It was down 2% for the session. So again, we'll see how that impacts the market tomorrow. And then we have options expiration. That's what happened with the NASDAQ. Again, beginning of the week, we filled the gap at the 20,400 area. This is a 60-minute chart. We tried to rally back and test those highs earlier in the week and then ended up selling off. We had that sell-off Tuesday, semiconductor sell-off, quiet rebound, volume on Wednesday. And then Thursday, the Taiwan semiconductor things, we saw the NASDAQ gap higher. We got a black candlestick here on the 60-minute chart, sold off, rebounded, did the same thing we did over here, sold off, rebounded, and then came back down. So again, now we're coming back towards the gap fill. Do we start a reversal, or do we again, still try to make our way up here to form a divergence, or do we get a lower high? Keep in mind, P made a higher high, NASDAQ did not, and sometimes you do see them diverge at turning points. We had the same thing happen back at the July peak, and that's I think it is very, very common. So I don't know that now again, we're making a lower high so far below the July peak over here, but a divergence here in this more recent price action we had at the July top, and then you have this larger divergence in that we're not moving above the July high, but yet S&P 500 is. So a larger divergence as well. Now, I don't know that the divergence plays out here. We still may go higher. We'll be watching options expiration, and again, close out the week on those weekly charts. Do we break the 5-week winning streak, or do we get a 6-week winning streak and then try to break it next week? Not seeing tensions in the Middle East heat up yet between Israel and Iran. No, Israel is getting ready to strike. Said they were going to do it before the election. The targets are this week being approved. And again, we can see this anytime now. We can see it for the weekends, and it could rattle markets, or we could see it on the weekend. Likely going to happen by the weekend. Maybe sooner. We'll see what happens. This is something we should pay attention to. Being told that oil facilities are not going to be a target, whether that will be the case or not, remains to be seen. Again, if they don't strike the oil facilities, it's probably going to not be as bad. And again, you do it over the weekend, after the markets close on Friday, over the weekend at some point, in an attempt not to rattle global markets. We'll see. I don't know. Thing to pay attention to, and it may or may not impact the markets. Markets might shrug it off. Markets might get a knee-jerk reaction, or it may create some real volatility, concerns of a regional war, or if oil facilities are a target. And just something to pay attention to, geopolitical issues, markets. So pay attention. How we close the week out, again, with the options expiration. But NASDAQ here, close up on the 60-minute chart, kind of doing what we did over here. So again, are we just going back to fill the gap and going to try to go up here, or we're now having this peak and getting a lower high and going to get a lower low and come down and start taking this level out and start seeing a reversal start seeing signals go turning bearish. So we'll be watching to see how this unfolds, but wanted to show you the price action today because the rally, good news, didn't give us a new high on NASDAQ, lower high, and the rally was sold. On Thursday it was sold. We'll see what happens on Friday. Zoom out here on the 60-minute chart real fast. And again, it could be that the ABC move is done here. Again, with filling the gap. We came up, we filled the gap, and we began to sell off. Now we're rebounding. Is the move done, or do we try to form a divergence right here in the most recent price action? The Dow and the S&P did. Maybe they're not done, and NASDAQ eventually tries to join them. But I don't think NASDAQ's going to push above this peak. And again, I use this divergence to help me call the top on the peak, on the July peak there on July 10th. Going into July 10th, I thought a top was about to form with that divergence and other indicators with the trend lines and so forth on the weekly and the monthly charts. We got the divergence on the 11th. I told you, hey, I believe that is a top. I still think that. We've got NVIDIA inching a little bit higher above the peak, but I don't think NASDAQ's going to be able to do it. And often NASDAQ will diverge with S&P again, could diverge with this peak right here where we get a lower high. But again, it also could diverge in this most recent price action here where we don't see NASDAQ come up. Like over here after we peaked, we rose back up, but we got a lower high. But S&P on the 16th, July 16th, moved to a higher high. And then on the 17th, we got that gap down. NASDAQ could make new highs, and they diverged from one another back there. Do they do it again here? We'll see what happens. Something we're paying attention to. The 50 period here, we had dropped below We had dropped below the 50 period right there, the green line, got back above it, and we're just kind of right on the trending cloud there, and the 50 period, we're just right there, just directly underneath it, it looks like. Another thing is we saw the MACD roll over today here in the daily time frame, and again, we've got this divergence going on. Again, maybe that's it. We're still resting here, just right at that 10 period moving average, but again, we had a rally, and the rally was sold, and we got a black candlestick. We got a black candlestick over here. Now, they don't always play out. This one, we got a black candlestick, and we kind of still went sideways. This was the day before the Fed. Black candlestick over here, and we still went a little bit higher, so maybe we see something like that and go up and hit the upper Bollinger Band. I talked about closing above the upper Bollinger Band. So far, we've tagged it right there, and maybe we still try to close above it, and if we do, then maybe you get this larger divergence playing out, but you get one here in the most recent price action on those 60-minute charts I've been talking about. So we'll see how it unfolds, but you did get a black candlestick. Does that start triggering a sell-off? MACD rolling over? We'll see what happens. And the upper Bollinger Band directly overhead still, again, did we just tag it like over here, and that's it? Or again, are we going to try to push up through it, close above it, but then see reversal? We've got options expiration, so again, anything's possible. You just never know. We do what we did today, rally in the morning, sell off the rest of the day. Do we close out strong, or do we just start selling off? We'll be watching to see how it unfolds to close out the week. And then do we break the winning streak? We've got a 5-week winning streak. Had the stochastic rollover, and again, we've seen this sell-off. Monday's high, filling the gap there, and now the MACD is rolling over. We get the histogram moving into the negative territory. It's the difference between the MACD line and the signal line, so the MACD got a bearish cross today. Got these divergences all over the place on the NASDAQ daily chart. A lot of indicators that they start playing out immediately. See those weekly charts begin to play out. So I'll be watching. Do we try to push above the upper band? Or do we get rejection? What happens with the black candlestick? And does this high hold right here or not? Again, I don't believe we're going to exceed the high over here. But again, still may try to get above this high right here if a divergence tries to form on the 60-minute charts. And again, see what happens with options expiration. We'll be watching. If Israel does respond to the Iranian missile attack from October 1st, they do it when markets are closed. Do they do it the weekend, and could create some volatility depending on when they do it. Also, will oil be a target? So again, some things to be paying attention to, geopolitical issues. Now the S&P 500, told you we had that downtrend. We gapped higher Monday. We went back and we filled the gap. We had the semiconductor sell-off. Now we've rebounded back up. And then today we gapped higher. See it right here, moving above this peak right here, but we got a black candlestick on the 5-minute chart. Got back above the 200 late yesterday, held above it. We're still above it, but we had this gap higher. We pulled back, rallied back up, got a lower high. The Dow made a higher high, by the way. The S&P made a lower high, kind of interesting. We sold off, and again, sold off on good news. That's never a good sign. And we got the topping tail there on Taiwan Semiconductor. Nvidia was not able to hold on to the gains. Nvidia squeaked out a gain, was up to new highs, and it didn't close there. That black candlestick in the daily time frame. So this is what happened on the S&P. Again, S&P came back and filled the gap. NASDAQ, not quite there yet. Do we fill the gap and try to rebound back up with options expiration here? Netflix earnings or whatever, more earnings tomorrow morning. Do we sell off or do we just sell off? And that's all she wrote. We'll be watching. But you have NASDAQ not making a new high of the Monday peak, but the S&P did. Are diverging. The S&P moved higher. NASDAQ did not. Monday high is holding when we filled the gap. Here's 5-minute chart of NASDAQ, just real fast so you can see it. We're making a lower high so far. Here's the peak from Monday. Now with the gap higher, we got above the 200. We pulled back, and here's the gap fill. We're coming towards it right here. S&P already filled it there at the end of the session. So we'll be watching the gap fill, try to rally back up and move above this high, or is it setting up now a lower high? So I'm looking for clues, looking for evidence I think the time is short for a topping process. I think we're putting the finishing touches on it. So again, do we get a divergence or do we get a lower high? And then we'll see once that decision is made, do we begin the turn? So again, possible lower high in play on NASDAQ. And I showed you this on the 60-minute chart, just on the 5 because I just showed you on the S&P. So back to the S&P. Again, has filled the gap. Here's the 60-minute chart of the S&P 500. Again, it did move slightly higher towards this trend line. We were just shy of it a little bit. I'll show you on the daily chart. But again, do we still go up and try to reach that level? Or again, is the divergence now done? You can see the divergence on the RSI. Or do we get something like this where, again, we see the RSI turn back up and we get one more push higher. We'll see how it unfolds. But again, the divergences are done. Could we build upon them? Sure. It's possible that the S&P and NASDAQ are diverging from one another. So we'll be watching how this unfolds closely. Do we get a big downturn on Friday or do we close strong? If we do we start turning next week? In that weekly chart on the S&P 500 to see what kind of candlestick forms. Another candlestick I got to share with you today in the daily time frame. Real important stuff. Now, here's the trend line in the 60-minute time frame. We had this other trend line. We overthrew it. I'm taking this from back here to here. And if you look at it in the daily time frame, you can see it right here. We do have a little tiny divergence now on the RSI in this most recent price action. We did move slightly higher. Didn't close there. We closed flat. But again, you can see the divergence on the MACD. The NASDAQ did get the bearish MACD crossover today. We don't have it yet on the Dow or the S&P. Could follow. We end up setting up that lower high on the NASDAQ. Get this rising wedge. Told you we still may try to inch up and hit that upper boundary. Exclude the shadows right here at this peak right here. You pretty much have reached it right there. Include the shadow. It's a little bit higher, but here I've excluded the shadow and the shadows over here. So the question now is, do we start a reversal with Friday? We'll be watching the 10 period and the trend line right here. The NASDAQ here in the daily time frame. Now, I want to show you the Bollinger Bands, but before I do, again, we've had this divergence form on the stochastic. Does it turn back up and we buy a little bit more time, or do we start seeing the MACD roll over? And that's all she wrote. So watching this is a very reliable reversal pattern. The rising wedge, we had a rising wedge over here. I don't have it marked on this chart, but I do on my other chart. This was a rising wedge as well. Just show you quickly on this chart right here. It's on my other chart, but I just drew it in real fast. It's a little rising wedge. It's a little bit better on the NASDAQ, but again, they were little rising wedge patterns that ended up forming divergences. Continue to talk about the Bollinger Band here. Again, I was looking for a push above that upper band. We got it on Monday. The sell-off with the semiconductors, the semiconductor sell-off there on Tuesday, and that was a drag on the market. We rebounded on Wednesday and then pushed on up above the upper Bollinger Band, but failed to close above it. And again, you can see the upper boundary here. If I exclude the shadows here and here, connected to this point, it's a little bit higher. Same thing with the Dow. The Dow is just under that. But again, that could be all she wrote right there. Start seeing a Friday sell-off, and again, I'll be watching the trend line. I'll be watching the divergence. Now, right here, my trend line moved on me. Let me fix this. Love the program, but sometimes these trend lines, they move on you. I've excluded the shadow right here. We have the lower boundary. That's right at that 20-period moving average. So again, going to be watching. Is this all she wrote? Or do we, flirt with this area a little bit more and then turn? You still have these negative divergences in place. You have it out here with momentum on the MACD. Money flow, it's all over the place. A lot of indicators have the negative divergences that are developing on the S&P. And again, today we got the bearish MACD rollover on NASDAQ. Talked about this over here. Again, we could see something very similar to this. And again, it's similar. We had a consolidation, a run up into this level, got above the upper band, pushed below it, and then kind of just straddled along it here for 3 sessions, going slightly higher before the big sell-off. And over here, very similar, we had the tagging of the upper band, we corrected sideways. The tagging of the upper band, we corrected sideways. We inched higher, and again, we're straddling after closing above that upper boundary and dropping back below it. We're kind of testing it, and here we did today. We tried to push above it, and we failed. Over here, we tried to push above it, and it failed. So again, but you had a couple more days. Do we see that happen and go up into the upper boundary of the rising wedge, or is that all she wrote? So again, what happens tomorrow? A potential 9 count will complete. I'll show you that in just a second. We have a larger head and shoulders in play if we start to see the rising wedge break down with the left shoulder here and then the head formation here. And again, seeing the rising wedge play out, it is a reliable reversal pattern.